It's a rematch of the 4A state championship, though I think both head coaches would agree it probably has nothing to do with this matchup, and so I picked it anyways. It is Sheridan at Rock Springs on Friday night, joined by Tigers head coach Mark Linhart. Mark, I know your team's coming off a tough one last
Mhm.
Friday in Gillette. How do you feel about them sitting at 1-2 right now, 3 games in?
It's one of those deals, David, where we got such a young team. I mean, last year I think we were the oldest team in 4A, and this year we've got to be the youngest. I mean, right now we're playing, excuse me, we're playing 5 seniors right now.
Oh,
So we are young. The senior class only had 7 kids in it. A couple have gotten hurt. And so, including our all conference player last year, Saban Carlson, I think we'll get him back mid-season. But right now we're playing a lot of really, really young kids, and guys are playing out of position. And so when I tell you that we're down by 1 score to Thunder Basin in the fourth quarter, and inside the 30-yard line with a chance to tie it, and then we have an 11-point lead with 5 minutes to go to be, against Campbell, and then we don't finish it. I think our youth has been exposed a little bit, but I'm proud of the way our guys are fighting, and we've still found a way to move the football pretty consistently, even as young as we are. And so I'm really, really proud of them. I'm proud of how they've responded this week in practice. But these next 3 weeks, Sheridan, East, and Trona, is kind of the gauntlet. The schedule makers didn't do us any favors, but this is what we've got to do, and this is what we've got to go through. But I really like our junior class, and I think that we're going to go out there and fight and see where we're at the end of the year.
so what are your thoughts taking on Jeff's squad? They lost a lot like you. He and I have talked a couple times, including last week when Laramie played up there, and 3 returning starters. Obviously, I think it's nice having the Gatorade Player of the Year back, but what are your thoughts on what you see out of Jeff's squad here?
They get better every week. The team that I saw against Central is not the same team that I've seen on tape, against Laramie. I think that they're definitely better at quarterback this year. Getting Gilbertson back, and anytime you got Colson Kuhn to lean on, that makes a big deal. It makes a big difference. But Dane Steele's a great player. The Kettner kid can fly, and he was a big player for him last year. And so it's typical Sheridan. They're always going to have skilled kids, linebackers, DBs, but their O-line just seems to continually get better and gel throughout the year, and it's the same stuff. So when you mix Jeff and Marshall's scheme and the fact that they don't beat themselves, and then they're going to get better week in and week out, I expect them to be right there at the end of the year again this year.
Yeah. What do you stress to your ball club in a week like this, to bring along a young team?
Well, I think right now, this sounds really weird, and this is hard for me to say. We have to focus on trying to have some fun. I feel like this group of kids has put a lot of pressure on themselves to maybe try and live up to what we were a year ago, and it's just not the same group. I mean, that was a special class. So I think our guys need to just enjoy it and have fun, understand that we're going to be the underdog, and go out and just try and get better, and then see if we can be a tough out for somebody at the end of the year. But I don't really like the term rebuilding year, but this, because some of the programs like Sheridan just reload. But this year is truly a rebuilding year. And so I'm excited. I'm having fun working with them. I think the staff is as well. And hopefully we can eliminate some of those critical errors that we've made. That, we've had 2 blown coverages that have given up long touchdowns the last 2 weeks. We've had, a botched onside kick recovery, just things that, some of the stuff we do, we had a blitz and we aborted our assignment, and it left a giant gap for Drew to run last week. And so on the touchdown to go ahead. So we just got to clean up some of these bonehead mistakes, but that's what you get sometimes with a young team and with kids playing out of position where you're trying to scramble and find a way to get them, you're just coaching week to week, and so hopefully if we can stay healthy, knock on wood, then we can really start seeing some improvements.
You brought up something really interesting. Is that something that you stress to these guys that, hey, the Isaac and Brock class, they built for a couple years before they
Yeah.
got to what happened last year? Is that something that you're really trying to stress to this group?
Yeah, I mean, in that group had played since they were sophomores, a lot of them, since my
Yeah.
first year here. And so that's what we're talking about. But, nothing's guaranteed next year. Nothing's guaranteed this year or the year after that. And so we've got to just kind of take it one day at a time and try and improve. And, Sheridan's a great example for us because we oftentimes watch their film with our kids and we tell them, like, these guys don't beat themselves very often. And this is what happens when you're good on special teams. And this is what happens when you don't give up big plays. And, you know, anything that you do in terms of getting yards against Sheridan, you're going to have to earn every single one of them because they just don't make a lot of mistakes, especially in the back end.
Well, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. We'll see what type of a game it turns out, but best of luck Friday against the Bronx.
All right. Thanks, David. Appreciate it, bud.
We continue to focus in on a big game in 4A. It's a rematch of last year's state championship. Obviously, got two different ball clubs squaring off, but 3-0 Sheridan going on the road to Rock Springs against the 1-2 Tigers, visiting with Sheridan head coach Jeff Mowry. And Jeff, first of all, talk a little bit about your 3-0 start and how you're feeling about your ball club. I know you're a young team because we've talked a couple times now in the last few weeks, but how you feeling after a 3-0 start?
You know, in 4A football, you can't ask for anything better than a 3-0 start. You know, there's a lot of teams out there that wish they were in our shoes. That being said, we've got a lot of opportunities for growth in front of us. We haven't played 3 clean games, in my opinion. We, like you said, we've had a lot of inexperience to start at the beginning of the year, and these young men have had some growing pains along the way, and we put the ball on the turf a little bit. We've made a lot of mental mistakes, and we've just got to continue to clean up our execution on the field, offensively, defensively, and special teams. But it's a fun group of young men to work with that, you know, we haven't had to coach effort. And when you don't have to coach effort, you can focus on the X's and O's. And these guys play hard every single play. And we really appreciate that. And it's really a pleasure to coach these guys.
Obviously, Colson Kuhn, Matthew Kettner, Dane Steele, they get a lot of the headlines. But have there been some other pleasant surprises for you early, Jeff?
You know, really, all across the board, we have you know, we had one experienced O lineman returning that played a year ago, and Dylan Bennett. He played left guard, or played both side guards for us last year. Didn't start ever, but was in the rotation, and he was our only returning offensive lineman. And he goes out in the first series of the first game, and so he's in a knee brace now. And we are playing 9 new offensive linemen, and really to put up the rushing numbers and to be efficient on offense, it's critical that you have an offensive line. And I've really been pleased with our offensive line, and Coach Reiser, our offensive line coach, would tell him it's too early to give them any credit. But I'm pleased with the growth that they've made. And I look forward to seeing what they can continue to do down the road. And the same can be said about our defensive line. A lot of inexperience there. You know, we graduated a lot of our defensive players, and those guys have stepped in and done a pretty good job. And I think, you know, this Rock Springs game coming up and then the next few weeks are really going to test where we're at.
Speaking of Rock Springs, what do you look at when you see Coach Lenhart's ball club this year?
You know, anytime you attach Coach Lenhart to a football program in Wyoming, whether it be a Rock Springs or Torrington, I think all coaches across the state will say you're going to get a well coached team that's going to play against you. And schematically, they're tough to prepare for. Offensively, they give you 75 formations, probably more than that. And Coach Lenhart knows how frustrating that is to scout for. And I think you know, obviously there's some rhyme and reason to that. So we've got to prep and get our guys ready for a different style of offense than they typically see. And that's a challenge. And then defensively, he changes his alignments depending on the opponent. You know, you saw in a Thunder Basin game earlier this year, they're double teaming their wideout, who's a really good wideout. And then other teams, they're really stacking the box against the run. And so there's not a set defense that they run. They prepare for each opponent differently. And so that's a challenge when you're preparing, you know, and football relies a lot on film and a lot on game preparation. And he makes that a challenge. And Coach Lenhart will have the Rock Springs Tigers ready to roll. You can guarantee that.
Yeah. What are some of the things you're stressing to your team this week about this game, Jeff?
You know, I think the biggest thing is we've got to be able to be on the same page. Communication is huge. You know, they are unbalanced frequently on offense. They try to slip in an eligible receiver where sometimes the previous play they were ineligible. And so we've really got to communicate across the board, and we've got to be on the same page. Whether it's the right page or the wrong page, we've got to be on the same page out there. The other thing is we've got to get off the bus. If you've ever been to Rock Springs Stadium and you've played down there, the visiting side is kind of a lonely place. They have a huge grandstand on the home side, and they've got just a train that rolls through about every hour on the visiting side, and it just echoes off those bleachers. And so it's a tough place to play. You drive down there 360 miles, you get off the bus, and you're expected to be at 100 miles an hour in 60 minutes, and that's a challenge. So we really got to get off the bus and get some momentum and some energy created on our side so we can get some momentum.
Well, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much. We'll catch you down the road probably, but best of luck at Rock Springs.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.